This isn't just about attracting, it's also about letting people have an informed decision about whether Nortal's right. But also it starts to get people engaged in Nortal and who we are as an organisation, so they almost feel part of it before they've come on board.
Welcome to the All-in Recruitment podcast by Manatal, where we explore best practices, learnings, and trends with leaders in the recruitment space. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channels on YouTube and Spotify to stay tuned for our weekly episodes. I'm your host, Lydia, and joining us today is Danny Caines, who is a global head of talent acquisition at Nortal. Welcome to the show, Danny, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So walk us through your experience in talent acquisition, Danny, and tell us a little bit about your current role as global head of talent acquisition.
I've been in, talent acquisition or in-house recruitment. I've been in now for over 20 years, which is a little scary. And that's transversed numerous industries, from broadcast media right the way through to more recent career being more IT, software type orientated recruitment. Current role is with Nortal, which is an Estonian founded consulting firm. They're based out of Tallinn, but spread across about 23 different offices across numerous countries. So my role is to head up a team of just short of 50 people across 13 countries, managing talent acquisition across those various extremely different cultures sometimes. And actually, I think the key thing for my role is building a TA team that's scalable globally, because we are growing significantly, but also one that can perform and therefore help positively impact the organisation from a growth perspective.
So that's a team of 50 to serve various countries and different markets, and for a workforce of how big is Nortal right now?
Nortal's 2,000 at the moment, but we've got pretty ambitious growth plans over the next 4 to 5 years, hence the size of the TA team.
Right. Yeah. So what are you looking at in terms of growth?
I think the aim is to get us to around about, sort of 10,000 employees in the next 4 to 5 years. Now that will be a combination of M&A and organic growth, but I'd probably hazard a guess that 70% of that's going to be organic growth. So that'll be sitting on mine and TA shoulders over the coming years. So pretty ambitious.
Well, which means it's a highly critical 12 months to just pivot that towards the growth targets such as that, right? So what are some areas that you prioritize in this role?
Interestingly, there's probably been only a handful of core priorities initially. Because of the economy, everyone would have seen that in talent acquisition, there's been lots of people laid off, unfortunately, across the market. So the focus when it comes to talent acquisition right now tends to fall into a small number of camps. So cost per hire is one. So total TA cost split across number of hires. And also time to fill. So role open right the way through to offer accept. Now for us, if I look at those two in isolation, because they're pretty important for us, at the end of last year, cost per hire was really high because we had a bigger team, and the hiring numbers were lower than anticipated at the end of last year. So we probably had a cost per hire of in excess of 10,000 euros, which is pretty extreme. The aim is to get that down to a global industry norm of around about 5,000, and we're well on the journey for that. Time to fill. Again, if I look across the board for core hires, so software engineers, testers and the like, so that makes up about 70 to 80% of our hires. That was sitting at about 8 to 9 weeks, which is not great at the end of last year. So the aim is to get that down to 2 weeks, which is super ambitious. And my team look at me like I'm nuts sometimes, I think. But we'd already got that down to 3.6 weeks by the end of the summer. So without a massive amount of effort. So we're well on the journey. I think the other two pieces that have been a priority for me is one, we had to go through a change of structure at the beginning of the year to move from a localized aligned business to a group function that's capability aligned, which was a big change. But also we had to implement an applicant tracking system in April. So we had to cram a lot into the first 4 or 5 months of this year. And then finally, the next piece I'm looking at from a data perspective is how do we monitor quality of hire? So initially that will be what's the attrition in the early employee life cycle, say the first 3 to 4 months. Eventually we'll track the data through performance into the first 12 months of the employee life cycle to understand if there's any trends between how we hire, where we hire from, and Does that impact attrition? Does that impact performance and all that sort of stuff? But we're a little way off that one for the moment.
That's a huge reduction in time, and that's a great bit of progress, especially in the past 12 months, right? What went into getting results like that?
I think the first thing is you need to set ambitious goals. If I'd come in and been super realistic and said, right, we're going to go from 8 to 9 weeks down to 5, then we probably would have got to 5.2, whatever. So I set the 2 weeks, which was a bit of a scary objective to my team, but I said, look, I've told the board that's what we're aiming for. So let's work out how rather than how not. So a lot of it, we haven't standardized tons of processes yet. We're in the process of doing that because it's absolutely key to increase speed is by standardizing processes, make things efficient. However, the good thing is because we've made it not just a TA target, we've made it a business target, everyone's now looking at it. And everyone's sort of saying, how do we get to that point? And I think that's the reason why we've done it. And it's, if I'm being completely honest, it's been done through an element of brute force initially. But as we standardize all our processes and understand what good looks like for Nortal for a software engineer, for example, and that's a consistent view across the globe for us, then that time to fill will get quicker and quicker. I think the other key thing here is trying to get more proactive around what your core hires are. So like most organizations, our strategic workforce plan is not that great. I think most TA folk will complain that planning is not great, but in most organizations it isn't. So what we did was we did a bit of a retrospective and said, right, over the last year or two, what was our core hiring skill sets? And that's what led us to this target. So we understood that it was software engineers, whether it was Java, .NET, Node.js, you name it, and test engineers. So that's why we put that focus on there. And what we're currently doing to help speed up that time to fill is we're going to start building talent communities. So not just pipelines of talent, we're going to start building these pipelines, but engaging the talent with events, white papers, interesting articles. So we're going to do a full talent marketing piece on it as well.
So in terms of sourcing the candidates, you've already seen what might be the plan in the near future, building these communities, right? But moving a little bit back, in terms of challenges that the team faced or you saw as you came in, what were these unique challenges when it comes to sourcing talent for these roles in various parts of the world?
So it's interesting. I don't think too many people in the software engineering recruitment space have got too many different challenges. They're quite similar. So software engineering has always been a tough piece of recruitment. But actually it's been even worse with the economy. So the businesses have this misconception that there's this flood of candidates out there and therefore it must be easy. I think the term shoot fish in a barrel has been used with me on the odd occasion. But actually it's completely the opposite. Most people are sticking where they are. They're a lot harder to move because they're not wanting to put themselves in an insecure position by moving. Those that are moving are going down one or two routes. They're either taking some time, well, actually maybe one of three routes. They're taking some time out. Some more and more people are career changing. And one of the big trends I'm seeing at the moment is this whole gig economy thing kicking. And this is something that most organizations, including ourselves, are going to have to look at. And this is where more and more people are looking to do consulting / contracting work rather than be in a permanent role. If I look at the UK and the US, for example, at one point, the average term that someone spent in a role was somewhere between 18 months and 3 years. Well, people can do a contract role for that and earn a lot more. So we're starting to see some of that, and that's created some real challenges. So I think for us in Nortal, to address that longer term, and that's probably into early next year, we need to start segmenting what our hiring is and understanding what we need for either different clients or different types of hiring. So I think that's the next challenge that's coming in for us.
Yeah, segmenting.
Not the only one.
Yeah, you raise a great point about looking into the contract workforce or the gig economy or what was previously known as even the liquid workforce, right? There are so many terms to describe people who may not necessarily be fully employed in one place. And I noticed also that Nortal has the Nomad program.
Yes.
in terms of that move into things like employee empowerment, right? So tell us a little bit more maybe about how that works.
I've only been with the organisation 13 months, but having spoken to my boss, the chief people officer, there was a concerted decision made, or a definite decision made, on how we would employ people globally. So the first thing is we can hire from anywhere. And we can do that for most, not for everything. We've got to bear in mind client needs. We've got to bear in mind certain regulations that you might have to consider in different countries. But typically we can almost hire from anywhere. So if we don't have a legal entity, then we do use an employer of register to help us with that. So that's the first thing. The Nomad program, it's something I've not taken advantage of yet, but I probably will do soon. Anyone that's following us on LinkedIn, Instagram, they'll see there's been a number of things raised on this recently. And this is where people within the organisation, within certain realms, there's some countries we can't go to, and we've got to be careful how long we're in those countries for tax reasons. But you could, in theory, say, right, during the winter, I'm going to go to the Canary Islands, and I'm going to live and work there for the next 2 to 3 months. All I need is a good Wi-Fi connection so that I can do my work. But then whilst I'm out there, I can do a bit of tourist stuff, have some nice sun. And people are doing that. Some people are splitting their time up so that they're going to places they've never been before, so they can mix up the work environment as well as taking some holiday and annual leave to get out and see different things. And I think for me, what I'm looking forward to on this front is the ability to not be stuck in my home office the whole time, actually be able to go out and see different places, and for not to have to impact my annual leave as such, which means I can balance family commitments as well. So, and the organisation is very good at that. We don't track people. We do ask people to tell their managers what they're doing so that we know in case it's something we need to be aware of. But ultimately we don't control. So I suppose what I'm saying in short, and you were talking about employee empowerment, this is ultimately what it is. We're trusting our people to do the right thing, and therefore be in the environments that make them comfortable to do a good job. So that's the key thing for me.
Yeah, so going back to the communities that you plan to build with developers and people in the niche tech scene, what might be perhaps some of the unique offerings or the kind of value proposition as an employer that you might present to them in these communities?
That's an interesting question. That's one we're working on. So just to give a little bit of background as to why we're working on this, and it's not so well defined now, is the organisation really up till recently has mainly grown through merger and acquisition. So a lot of our businesses have been locally run, and they have their own message, their own approach under the Nortal banner. There was a conscious decision made that we need to be globally scalable fairly recently. So we're now looking at this sort of 80-20 rule, in the sense of this is what Nortal is, 80%, but 20%, this is the local nuance. So as far as looking at those communities is concerned, there's a couple of things, and we're still building these up at the moment. They're still in their infancy, but what I wanted to do is I didn't just want a pipeline of candidates, because then we would be like everyone else or another recruitment agency or whatever that's just churning bodies through a pipeline. That adds no value at all. I think the proposition for us is being able to tell the Nortal story to people in those pipelines, and get them closer and closer to the brand, so that a couple of things happen. One, they know it's either right or wrong for them, because I think it's as important to know the positive and the negative side as anything else. This isn't just about attracting, it's also about letting people have an informed decision about whether Nortal's right. But also it starts to get people engaged in Nortal and who we are as an organisation, so they almost feel part of it before they've come on board, which almost entices them to think, why wouldn't I want a job at Nortal? The other piece for me is that when you do this with these pipelines, and I've done it in previous organisations, they then make referrals. So they're talking to their friends in the bars and the restaurants at home, and they're going, well, look, Nortal's got this great thing going on, and they're engaging with these developers or these testers, or I'm looking at building one up for TA, right? So, and actually it'd be a great community to be part of. I'm seeing this information come out, and what I want is, I want us to be seen as a conscientious contributor to the industry. not just a body shop. And I'm not saying that's what Nortal is now, but I want us to make sure that we're seen as someone that people want to come to for all the right reasons. So that's, sorry, a long-winded answer, but that's sort of the aim for those communities.
It's interesting that these communities are built around a sort of shared interest or a shared goal towards, if you're looking at adding value to a community of developers, that might be also giving back to that community in that industry, right? So there's also this opportunity to tell or to present these communities an opportunity for growth within the company, right? And you might be hitting various types of cultures, looking at people who will be working remotely, as you said, and working by themselves pretty much, right? So what strategies might be useful to make sure that there is some kind of cultural assessment for those who are coming in?
So it's interesting. I wouldn't even use the term assessment. So I'll give you an example. I'm a prime example here. So I'm only one of 3 permanent employees in Nortal that works in the UK. So the rest of my team, so the MD of the UK is here. One of my team is here. We have a lot of contractors in the UK, but the perm side is quite low. So actually the majority of who I speak to is well outside of the UK, transversing from Finland, Estonia, Lithuania, Germany, Serbia, Middle East, the States, right? And places like Ukraine and Poland. So I have to do this all the time. So there's a couple of things we need to bear in mind. Is one, we need to be cognizant of the rituals and cultures and different things that go on in different countries. For example, the Middle East, they even have a different working week compared to the more Western side. I've got some of my team in Seattle, which for me is 8 hours time difference, and from people in Estonia is 10 hours time difference. So what we're trying to do is make sure that our daily rituals, if you like, our daily routines and our meetings are aware of that, so that we can work around it and we've got flexibility. Now, what we don't want to do, and I think going back to the nomad thing, Nortal gives employee empowerment. So if I need to work till 9 o'clock at night because I'm dealing with the US, they're not expecting me to start 8:30 in the morning and work right the way through 12, 15 hours. So what we try and do is we try to say to people, you manage your day as you need to, as long as it doesn't impact client work, as long as it keeps the quality up, and as long as we're not burning you out. That's the most important thing.
What about the internal culture?
This is an interesting one. So we're creating our EVP now, and I go back to the fact that we've had a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So I would say that we've had almost 13 different organizations under the same roof with slightly different cultures in each one. And each organization has done a really good job of doing that. I think naturally the organization has been good at collaboration, so we're quite lucky there. So that's worked across the organization. More recently, we've relaunched our brand and we've started to look at creating our EVP. So going back to this 80-20%, this will then help inform us on, how we should communicate across the organization, what things we should be doing to make sure that Nortal is front and center around what we do. So we're not there yet, but we will be fairly quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to also see how that 80-20 rule just plays out in terms of mergers and acquisition, which part of the entire culture becomes the 20 and which part of that becomes the 80.
Well, the aim still is to have 80%. This is global, this is Nortal, and 20% like nuance. And this is what we're keen to do. But you're right, I don't think it's going to be as clear cut as that in every single region.
And also because it's a work in progress and still being built. Right? Yeah, so that's going to be interesting to look at as well. And, I'm still quite intrigued by how quickly you brought down the time to hire, which is 9 weeks to 3.6, right? Then this goes back also to the interview, the hiring process and the onboarding process for international hires or for anyone really who's joining the company. So what might be an ideal time? I know you said 2 weeks being the target, but what goes into this 2 weeks? What makes the interview process seamless and pleasant for the candidate?
This goes on way before the interview process, to be honest. This is how we attract, this is how we select, this is how we go into offer management, etc., etc. So if I was to just give a really brief synopsis, one, that what goes into that 2 weeks is one, getting rid of the need to start recruitment from scratch every time you hire. So we've already identified the core role. So we're building those pipelines as talent communities. We're going to have engaged candidates that we can pick out all the time. That's the theory behind it. That's what I've done in practice. So that saves a lot of time up front. Then when you look at that sort of interview process, that best to really define this as the candidate journey. There's a couple of things that need to happen. We need to, one, standardize as many processes as possible. And at the same time, we need to be in agreement about what good looks like. Because the problem being is when you've got an organization that's so local as we have been up till recently, what good looks like in Germany is completely different to what good looks like in Serbia. So, and it's not that one's good and one's bad, it's just different. So what we're now doing is we're doing a concerted effort with our engineering capability to define what good looks like so that we can then start to use qualified interviewers from anywhere across the globe. So they're not limited to just a small number of people. So if you look at standardization, what good looks like, and then that pool of interviews, that naturally gets it quicker. So we should, in theory, be able to go to a role intake meeting with 5 profiles of candidates and say, right, do they look right? Yes, great. Let's get them straight in and constantly be picking from those pipelines so that we're getting it going quickly. Then at the same time, if we can ensure that our steps are no more than 2 or 3 steps, so the candidates are already screened before they've got to that intake meeting, it's then hiring manager technical interview and a technical assessment, straight into final manager interview, straight into offer. You should be able to turn that around in 10 working days. And I have done in previous organizations, but you need to be really organized in your process and very engaged. But you've also got to balance, because I have been asked, can we do this with other roles? The answer to that is no. There's certain people like senior project managers or program managers that would feel you're being too pushy by pushing them through too quickly in 2 weeks. Software engineers are a different story because they've got multiple opportunities flying around them. So they want to be able to make a decision quickly. So that's the reason why we've done this. And, fingers crossed it works. I'm confident it will do. We've still got a lot of work to do. But yeah, if you standardize processes, get the right interviewers in place, make sure you've got those pipelines built, then that 2 weeks is absolutely attainable.
And this also takes into account technical assessments, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes, it does. Yeah. And look, there's other ideas that I've bounced around with in the past, but it doesn't always work. Some of them are quite out there, where I've suddenly thought about, do we do some gamified assessment, people that are in our pipelines, and throw technical challenges out there for people to go, have a shot at this, see what you think, and you could win an Amazon voucher. And then inadvertently, we've assessed someone before they've even hit our pipeline. So these are other things we could do. And I know I've done them with other organizations again. And they do work to a point, but what you don't want to do is blast that community with lots of challenges, because they soon wake up to what you're doing.
Absolutely. Just keep it fun. It's interesting to see the different ideas that come into play when we talk about engaging communities, right? And all these are already people within the tech space, and you've got to also keep up with what they're doing and what's the latest in these industries, and what might be the latest skills that you should look out for that's out there in the market. What are the trends, etc.? So how does your team keep up with these trends?
Again, we're getting there at the moment. So what I'm trying to do at the moment is I'm building a talent intelligence capability in TA at the moment. So what I mean by that, in simple terms, and I don't really patronize into the TA community because these are interlinked words, but talent analytics is how you perform internally as a TA function. Talent intelligence is what you're getting from the market. So where we're moving to at the moment is looking to get more proactive on this front. So not only does that look for skills and where they're sitting in cost, but it also starts to identify what are the new technologies coming out. So obviously generative AI is a big thing right now, right? Everyone's talking about it, ChatGPT and the various other flavors of that. But also we've got to start to understand what other technologies are coming up. This is going to be really important for us as an organization because we're a consulting firm. So what are our clients going to be looking from us in the next 2 to 3 years?
Exactly.
But actually then on top of that comes the next hard question: how are we going to find the skill sets? Or are we going to train the skill sets, or are we going to do both? Therefore, we'll use this intelligence to understand what academia is doing in different regions in the world, because we might identify one region who's doing particularly well on the AI front, or AI data or natural language programming, or something like that, or something even further more advanced that we should be paying attention to. So I think that the short answer is using that intelligence and the data just to keep the business informed and keep ahead of the trend. Again, we're not there yet. It's a journey, but we're starting to build the foundations of making sure we can do that.
In terms of your team using these AI capabilities that are out there in the past 12 months, what is the impact of artificial intelligence in your team in talent acquisition so far? The results you've seen?
It varies per region because not everyone's adopted it as well as others. I mean, personally, it makes me more productive. I've become editor rather than copywriter, if I'm being honest, in a lot of cases when it comes to ChatGPT. And I think the same could be said for a lot of the team. There are some out there that have got more productive with their stakeholders that are interested in this. They're trying to work out how they can make things. And at the minute, it's more based around, let's be honest, writing a job description, coming up with an interview format. What would a good social media post look like? It's all really rudimentary stuff. But this is stuff that might have taken a recruiter or a hiring manager an hour or two to write, and it's suddenly become a 5 to 10 minute edit exercise. So at the moment, it's been more about increasing productivity and making life easier. Longer term, where I'd like to see AI really play a part is in our attraction, so that in talent intelligence, but also secondly, how we can use AI in the selection process without taking away the human aspect, because there's a lot of horror stories around there when it comes to AI and selection. So it's understanding where we can best use it ethically to make things easier for both us and any candidates that we would want to attract.
Final question, Danny, with all these changes that you've seen and all your experience, what advice would you give someone who's starting out in talent acquisition today?
I think that there's a common misconception that talent acquisition is just recruitment. Okay. And it's really hard. If someone asks me what I do for a living, it's really hard to define it. You end up falling back to it's just recruitment, but it's not. So I think anyone coming in, most organizations, if you are truly talent acquisition, you are a business partner. You're an internal consultant. So you're not just there to put bodies in seats, right? You're there to actually start to advise the business and the markets that you're working in, the skill sets you're looking. So anyone coming into TA, I would say start to think about how you generate or how you learn that internal consulting skill, where you go to find that information. That's the first bit. And then how you use data to drive your decisions, because quite commonly in TA in the past, we've been driven by emotion. So no, I can't find that purple unicorn because it's impossible and I just know it. Actually, it doesn't cut it with most managers. Going with the data, going with solutions talk. I think the other thing is resilience. TA is a delivery function that sits typically in the HR or people and culture space. So it's always at risk of becoming the blame, the reason things go wrong. Okay, and anyone in TA can probably relate to this. And I think if we become more data orientated, we become more resilient and therefore more confident in our messaging, then there's no need for that, because that won't be possible. So I think anyone coming in, be consultative, know your market, be data driven. And be confident. You are another employee. You are not a slave to the master.
Yeah, we're seeing a time in TA where it is as much analytical as it is communicative. So it's Absolutely. An interesting time to definitely be in TA and to see all the different progresses that are coming in and making an impact in that industry itself, right? So, Danny, thank you so much for your time and these great insights, and I congratulations on the results you've achieved in the past 12 months with your team, and looking forward to, and I wish you all the best for the next 4 to 5 years and the plans that are around it. So thank you so much, Danny. Do drop us your contact details so anyone in the audience might be able to pick up a conversation with you.
No, thanks for having me, Lydia. Much appreciated. LinkedIn, there's not too many Danny Caines on LinkedIn. So the name's DANNYCAINES. I'm also on Instagram, etc. But LinkedIn's probably the best place to catch me. That's where every happy recruiter sits, right? So,
well, thank you very much, Danny. And we have been in conversation with Danny Caines, Global Head of Talent Acquisition at Nortal. Thank you for joining us, and remember to subscribe to stay tuned for more weekly episodes from All in Recruitment.